Well, welcome back to another Coffee and a Chat. And today I want to just share a testimony with you because when I woke up this morning, some things, the Lord began to lay some things on my heart, and I began to realize some stuff, and it was kind of cool. And I just, it brings out understanding for me more of the character of God and the importance of trusting Him and how amazing He is and powerful, and how He can take the most awful things and turn them into something good. So here goes. This next week that's coming up, I will be going through an anniversary, the anniversary of what I believe is the darkest day of my life, at least so far. And I would hope it is the darkest day and that I never go through something worse than what that day was, because on that day, there were some things that were disclosed to me that was beyond my ability to cope with. There were lies that were exposed and things that had been done, harm that had been meant for me. It was a very awful day. And as this was all being disclosed to me, and I believe that it was being disclosed to me for the purpose of pushing me over the edge. 25 days earlier, my oldest brother had committed suicide. And if you've ever had someone in your life commit suicide, especially someone close to you or closely related, you know that it puts a weird twist on the whole death thing, and there's a lot of stuff to deal with. One of the things being that we always want to know why, and even if a note's left or anything like that, nothing ever really answers that question. It's something that we just don't really know. And I suppose, what I saw in my own family is that we all kind of came up with our idea of what we thought the why was in order to come to some kind of point of peace. And, but do we really know? No. So I was already in a fragile state. There had been some hard things between my brother and I, some stuff that had been covered for a lot of years. And what I didn't realize at the time was in his death, it began to unbury those things to where I couldn't keep them covered anymore. There were things that had been hidden and kept secret that were being forced, or would eventually be forced out into the open. And I thought that was going to be the death of me, and it actually ended up setting me free in a lot of ways from being held hostage to these horrible secrets. But as horrible as all that was, what happened 25 days after his death was worse. And I was still married to my first husband. And I knew he had some problems. I knew that he had some issues. But on that day, he decided to start disclosing things to me. And what I learned that day is it was far worse than what I thought it was. That there were things that I had questioned him about, and he had, over the years, and he'd always been denied them, and, and I would never do that, or, I'm true to you, or, I'm not that kind of a person, or whatever. And then on that day, what I almost felt like bragging, he began to tell me, oh yeah, by the way, those things are true. Not only are the things you suspected about me true, but they were even worse than what you thought. Here's, and he just started laying all this stuff out. And it was some really, really bad stuff. So I already was traumatized, and this just added to the trauma. And on that day, I went through such pressure and stress that, well, actually, little pieces of my brain exploded on that day because it was that bad, that traumatic. And all my good memories left me, and I could only remember horrible things, and all the horrible things he was standing there and had been telling me. I couldn't remember how to tie my shoe. I had to learn to tie my shoes all over again. I could not sign my name because I didn't know how to sign my name. I had to learn that all over again. I couldn't sleep. I had to be medicated to get me to be able to actually fall asleep. I had such severe depression and anxiety, and all this stuff hit me on one day, and then, you know, was dealt with for a long time afterwards. So, I thought on that day, it's over. I will never get through this. There's no hope. I lost all sense of home. I didn't belong anywhere. Everything in life felt like a lie. And I was very drawn to God, but yet I couldn't remember if I'd ever done anything for him, if I'd ever done anything good in my life. All the happy memories, all the senses of accomplishment or doing what I should have done in life, it was all gone. It was truly a day of death in so many ways and on so many levels. And the darkness that came after that, I couldn't leave my home. There was so much fear, so much anxiety in me that I could not step out the door. And if I had to go to a doctor's appointment, because by the next day there was a whole team of people, of doctors and counselors working together, try to save me. And that was a horrible thing, to be in that position. Everything was so horrible. And I didn't know if God was even out there anymore. Had he ever really been there? Was he listening to me? Did he know me? Did he care about me? But I would cry out to him anyway, just in case he was there, just in case he was listening. So hopefully you understand what I'm trying to say here. I was so far down that I was looking up to try to see the bottom of the barrel. And I was in a hole so deep and so dark that I did not believe there was any way I would come out. Now, there was a lot that I went through just trying to deal with all of this and get through all of it. I had been married to my husband for like 30 years. And suddenly, everything was a lie. That whole 30 years was kind of a joke to him. But that was my life. And I really loved him. And I believed our family was not perfect, not even always good enough, but I believed it could be. I believed that there was hope. And on that day, it's like there was no hope. You know, if you ever saw The Wizard of Oz, you know, the curtain had been pulled back and now you see what's really back there. And it's not what you thought it was. So, I didn't feel safe anymore. I didn't feel loved. I didn't feel wanted. I had no hope. And I gradually was, you know, over time coming through it, and God used it to do a lot of great things, to help a lot of people. I grew spiritually. I definitely got a lot closer to God as I began to, you know, get some memories back and get back on on a level of reality, I found my hope in Christ. I found the husband that I needed in Christ. It wasn't in that earthly man, and it wasn't going to be. He had no interest in that. Everything had just been to help him get where he wanted to be. And 6 years later, I no longer served a purpose in that. And so he threw me away, discarded me, and divorced me, which also was a dark time, but not as dark as that day. Now, this morning I woke up. Now, here last month when it was the anniversary, let me back up a second. When it was the anniversary of my brother's suicide, I didn't even remember that until the next day. And I was like, wow, that's never happened before. For 17 years, I always would feel a dread coming on. The day of his suicide would always be, especially when my parents were still living, because it was so traumatic for them. And, you know, and we would just try to get through the day. And, you know, and this year, I didn't even know. I didn't feel that upcoming dread. The day went by, and I never thought about it. And the next morning, it was like, oh, yesterday. Wow, that's different. Well, this morning I woke up and I'm thinking, okay, this is coming up. It's next week. What day next week? And, you know, and I'm starting to think about it. And then I thought, I don't even really care. It doesn't really matter, this anniversary coming up. And I was like, Lord, what is it this year? Like I went past my brother's suicide and without remembering it until the day after. And this year I'm expecting to feel all this dread because it's a very hard anniversary to go through. I usually on that day, I don't go anywhere. I don't talk to people. I don't have anything to do with anything because I just don't know what it's going to be like for me. And I realized that it doesn't even matter what day it is next week. I don't really care. And then I began, as I laid there in bed, talking to the Lord about it, I began to see all the amazing things that God has done in my life through the darkest time I ever experienced. He's brought so much good through it. He has done such a work in me. I am closer to him and more intimate with him than I ever was before all that, because that day wiped everything away and suddenly I had nothing left. And yet there was Jesus. He never left me. He never abandoned me. Just because I was feeling he was distant didn't make that reality. He wasn't distant at all. He was right there. He walked me right through it, through some hard times, through some very close calls. He spoke to me. He intervened. And he kept telling me he wasn't done with me. And I believe that as a result of that darkest day and the days that followed, that God has done greater things through me than he ever did before. And probably because he's got more to work with now than what he had before. Because I have faced the ugly truth and survived it. And that has made me stronger. He is my strength. I no longer have that first husband. Like I said, 6 years later, he discarded me. He was done. He threw me in the trash and told me, I'm going to say whatever I have to say about you to make sure that people blame you for this divorce, because I will not be the bad guy. And I remember when he told me that, I was just like, yeah, I know, because that's how he handled things. I'd seen him to do that to so many other people. What I didn't know is in the 36 years that we were married, behind my back, he was telling people a different story about me and who I was and what I was like, and that I didn't know. You know, to my face, it was like, oh yeah, she's just the greatest thing. I just love my wife, you know, but behind my back, she's crazy. She's always, you know, pushing me for something. And Well, once I found out all the lies he'd been spreading about me, long before there was a divorce, it made so many things make sense. Because there were times when he would use me for his alibi. And, you know, like he wouldn't be somewhere, oh, because Angie was sick. Well, I wasn't sick. And then, you know, somebody around me, how are you feeling? Are you doing better? And I'd be like, I'm feeling okay. And I think, I mean, after a while, I'd start going, was I sick? And I just don't remember. Yeah, my first husband was a narcissist. And they're really good at getting you to question reality. You know, to buy into their false reality they're trying to sell you on, and you begin to question what's real. Oh yeah, I don't miss that at all. So anyway, I went through the divorce, and that was hard. But even in that, God did some great things and was able to show me stuff. Like that if I was looking for a husband, I was looking for the same thing that had just left me. And when that realization came up that that's what I was finding, I was like, I don't want to ever be in that situation again. So I'm not going to date. I'm not going to look for a husband, nothing. And I had told the Lord, unless you bring a man to me, sit him down in front of me and say, here, this one, marry him, I'm done. And I remember, I'm sure I'll be very lonely. I don't know how I'll get through it. It'll just be me and you, but we'll be okay. Oh yeah, I've even outgrown that thing now. So it wasn't all that much longer after that the Lord brought Marvin into my life. And it wasn't all that long after he brought Marvin into my life that God set Marvin down in front of me and said, here, this one. Marry him. And so I did. And, well, because, you know, Marvin was in favor with it. I didn't say, hey, by the way, you got to marry me. Because what God was doing in me, he was doing in Marvin too. And, but even then, when we got engaged, I told him, I want to be engaged for a year. I don't want to get married for a year. I want a year to be sure about this. And then if either one of us have doubts, you know, it's, you know, free to walk out, no questions asked. You don't have to share anything you don't want to. But if either one of us were ever not sure and uneasy, and yet in that year, you know, I just was more and more sure every single day. And Marvin probably would tell you the same thing, because we know that God's the one that brought us together. And I remember Marvin one day going, are you sure you want to marry me? And I said, if the Lord brought you to me and said you were his best choice for me, which he did, why would I say no to that? No, I think I'd rather go out and find somebody not quite so great that wouldn't be so good for me. No, I'm not going to tell God no on that. If you're his choice and his best for me, that's what I want. And so it was, you know, even in getting married to Marvin, it wasn't about me out looking for what I wanted, but it was me receiving what God wanted for me. And I will tell you, that is so much better. And I don't regret it at all. I have this wonderful husband. He's not perfect. I always have to put that down. But he is a good man, even though the Bible says nobody's good. Jesus in Marvin is good. How's that? And Jesus in Marvin and Jesus in Angie makes a really good marriage. A marriage that's not filled with fighting and crying and sorrow and regret, but a marriage that is filled with joy and love and life and laughter. Yeah, it's way, way better. So I have learned a lot about listening to the Lord. And I have learned a lot about trusting God and not myself, leaning not on my own understanding, but in all my ways, acknowledging him. And he does direct my path. So my testimony today that I want to share with you is the darkest, most awful time of my life that could have very well killed me was the path that God chose to bring me to the brightest, most light-filled time of my life. Doesn't mean it's always been easy. It doesn't mean that I have everything brand new, fancy, lots of money, you know, lots of friends, all that. No, I have people that hate me that I thought were my friends at one time, but they hate me now because they listened to what my ex-husband said. And my true friends were the ones that heard what he said and then came to me and said, that doesn't sound right. I don't believe that's you. But if it is, I'm still going to love you. And I sat down very honest with anyone that came to me like that. Okay, what is it that you heard? Nope, that's not true. Or that's a half-truth. Here's the part that is true. The rest of it was made up. But I was honest with them. I was honest with my kids. I was not perfect. I was not the perfect wife. And I did things I'm ashamed of and things that I regret. Not for any other reason than because of the impact it had on my relationship with Jesus. When I did things that drove a wedge between me and the Lord because I wasn't being obedient to him, I was reacting out of my own feelings, thoughts, and emotions. Yeah, and that doesn't usually work out good for me. It's better to listen to the Lord. So that's what I want to tell you today, because everybody has a dark time, some people darker than others. If you're in a dark time, like where I was, maybe you feel right now like there's no hope. There's no tomorrow for you. You're not going to make it. There's no life. I'm telling you, hang on to Jesus. Do not let go, because he can take the darkest, most awful thing that you've ever been through and turn it into the greatest joy of your life. And that, my friend, is something that only God can do. No man can do it. No woman can do it. No job can do it. No check, no matter how many zeros are on that, can do it. No fancy house can do that. No snappy new car can do that. Nope. No drug. No bottle of alcohol. Nothing can do that for any of us except the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jehovah Jireh, the Lord our provider. El Roy, the God who sees us. God sees you. He knows right where you're at. And you know this moment. But see, what God can see and what God knows that you don't know and I don't know when we're in those moments is what comes next, what's in the future. And let me tell you, my dark day got darker and darker for a while before it got better. But what was happening on the darkest day of my life was the beginning of God setting me free from a bondage that I was suffering and dying under, and I didn't even know it. So today, I give all honor, all glory, all praise, all power to the Most High God, because he pulled me out of that pit and he put me on top of a mountain where I could see things from a new perspective. And there is hope, and there is joy, and there is life. And whatever I face, I can always just remind myself of where I've been and where he brought me to. So wherever I'm at right now, if it's a dark place, hopefully never darker than where I've already been, but if so, then it is. But wherever I'm at, when it's hard, when it's dark, when it feels like it's never going to be okay. I know that it will, because he has already proved himself to me over and over and over again. So here I am, 17 years later, a miracle to be alive. And I don't, for the first time coming up on that anniversary, I don't feel that dread. I don't feel that heaviness wanting to suck me down. And whatever day it is next week, I will go through that day like any other day, and it'll all be good for the glory of God. There's hope. All right. I hope this encourages somebody out there. I hope it sheds light on a dark corner for somebody. That if you're anywhere and whenever, and see, this is the beauty of this. This will go out on a particular day, but it'll stay on the internet as long as the internet's there. So this could be on down the road years from now, and somebody, I may be dead and gone, but somebody will see this video in the darkest time of their life. And let me tell you, this little secret that's not a secret at all, if God did it for me, and he did, then he can do it for you too. He doesn't have any limits. He can't only do it for so many people, and he's not a respecter of people or of persons. He doesn't play favorites. So he doesn't just choose some people he'll do it for and say the others, they don't matter. You matter. And he cares as much about your dark place that you're at as he ever cared about mine. And he will bring as much light into your life, maybe even more than what he brought into mine. So I speak blessings to you today, and may God be the answer to every need you have, because he is ready and willing. You just need to receive it from him. But yes, sometimes the days are very dark before we begin to see the light of what Jesus is doing. So the day that I thought was going to be my death was actually the day setting me free to be alive. Oh, how powerful is that? All right. I love you guys, and I'll talk to you again real soon.